ورسالة للي حط الانفجار انه نحن 33 يوم بحرب تموز، نزلت كل هاي البنايات اللي حطوا لنا هيدي فرقعة عم تعتبر عندنا نحن، ما بتفرق معنا لا انفجار ولا شيء، وباقيين على خط المقاومة لاخر يوم بحياتنا.
بده يهزنا نحن اللي دمرت الضاحية كلها والجنود كله تدمر، والباع 3/4 تدمر وما انهزينا، نحن صخرة صامدة، نحن ما بننهز ولا بنموت ولا بنركع، نحن احفاد الامام الحسين ابن علي بن ابي طالب، نحن بدنا نخاف؟
هلا يا سيد نحن رجالك نفديك بدمنا وبروحنا.
احنا مش بحزب الله، احنا ما حدا يفكرنا انه بحزب الله لو يقولوا نحن بحزب الله، نحن مش بحزب الله، نحن مع الخط الحق اللي ماشي عليه حزب الله.
يا خيي هذا كله مستفيد منه العدو الصهيوني، والناس ارهابيين وبدهم الفتنه وعم يعملوا لنا كل يوم تحريض مذهبي وبيحطوا لنا عبوه هون وساعه بيلقطوا هذا من هون وبيعملوا لنا مشاكل.
My name is Maria Maguire. I'm from the Peace People in Belfast.
And you recently went on a trip to Syria. Can you tell us about your trip and what you saw?
Yes, we went with a delegation of 16 people into both Lebanon and Syria, and we went at the invitation of the Patriarch of Syria to see what was happening. What we found in Syria, first when we were in the Beirut, in the camp, refugee camp, where thousands and thousands of Syrians had fled from Syria into the refugee camps in Beirut. The people there had nothing. The Lebanese government was doing its best to cope with the refugee influx, but there were far too many. But we asked several people why did they flee Syria. And I'll just tell you one story. One man told us that he, in his town in Homs, the foreign fighters had come in. They were shooting and killing and they were raping women and burning their homes. And thousands of people fled because they were frightened. One man told me the story that he is, in his mosque, he was an imam, a holy man in his mosque, because he spoke out against the violence of these foreign fighters. They came, they abducted him, they held him and tortured him for several days. They cut off his ear. He showed us his ear was cut, his throat was tried to kill him. But he said that these are foreign fighters. These are fighters from outside. They're well armed, they're well equipped, they're very vicious. And he said these are not Muslims. He said good Muslims don't do anything like this. They're fundamentalist extremists. And that's what we learned. Within Syria, there are over 40,000 foreign jihadists attached to Al-Qaeda, well-tripped, well-armed, with plenty of money, and their agenda is not for human rights or democracy within Syria. It is to take over Syria. But they are being funded by Qatar, Saudi Arabia, America, and Britain. These people are actually now sending arms to jihadists who are murdering people inside Syria.
Citizens at the site of the explosion reflect courage and steadfastness. Some of the citizens who were in the region, I guess in Lebanon, where the terrorist explosion went off, made a statement in which they reflected courageous and steadfast spirit they've always had during the crisis. So this is something that, this is the video that I showed in the beginning. They said here that nothing would shake their will and determination, especially as they've lived under the threats and attacks by the Zionist entity for decades now. Syria war spillover, Beirut car bomb wounds 53, so attack fuels fears of Syria spillover. And that's, of course, the purpose is to drag Lebanon into it, flood them with refugees so they can't handle it. Then you got this other group, headed up by this leader, extremist Assad, who's carrying out all kinds of atrocities, including attacking and killing Lebanese government soldiers. So a car bomb detonated in the suburb of the Lebanese capital, wounded 53 people. It says here causing heavy damage across the area. It says a number of the casualties were children. It says there's no claim of responsibility yet, but it was in an overwhelmingly Shiite neighborhood with a strong Hezbollah presence. Has many concerned that the attacks spill over from the Syrian civil war. And you have to remember, just how we've been talking about this. These mostly Sunnis, or at least whatever they are, like I said, they're not even Muslims. They're just kind of jihadists or mercenaries. They're working for Israel. They're working for Zionists, and they're being funded by the United States and Qatar and the Gulf states. We've even covered articles about basically Blackwater, and that an SAS being operating inside Syria, even Zionists, basically IDF, Special Forces for Israel, operating inside and around Syria. And just recently in the last week, that Al-Qaeda, or these Al-Qaeda jihadists, are actually working with the CIA. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see this. The attack also coincided with the first day of religious important month of Ramadan, which adds credence to the concerns that it's sectarian spillover from Syria. So they know what they're doing here. Israel accused of false flag terror car bomb in Beirut by Lebanon's former prime minister. So it says here, in response to the terrorist attack, the former prime minister Hariri said here, make that smaller there, seen by many as an agent of Washington, D.C.'s foreign interests, has seemingly done the improbable, issuing a statement which will surely create problems for Washington, D.C. and anger the Israeli lobby. He said the blast requires the highest level of awareness and vigilance in the face of dangers that surround the country and the entire region, especially while facing attempts by the Israeli enemy to push Lebanon to strife by organizing terrorist attacks, as happened today. The Israeli defense minister basically denies the involvement in the blast. He denied those entities a Zionist role in the car bomb that attacked the Beirut southern suburb on Tuesday. So it goes on here, and he says, speaking during a tour of an Israeli army training base, he said that the Syrian conflict reached Lebanon a while back after Hezbollah interfered in. We see that what is happening in Tripoli, Sidon, and Beirut, where a car bomb exploded, this is mainly a struggle between Shiites and Sunnis, so we don't interfere. That's right, you stand back and let everybody else do your work while you sow the seeds of discord, like you do in the United States, and you're doing currently right now. Israel prepares for the next war with Hezbollah guerrillas in Lebanon. So that's a pretty interesting headline. This is from March 2013. Israel prepares for next war with Hezbollah guerrillas in Lebanon. So as foreign jihadists invade Syria, funded by the West, benefiting Israel. It says here, military planners in Israel are growing increasingly jittery that the fighting could spill over into Israel. So that's what they would want, right? France to provide Lebanese army with heavy weapons. The editor here says Turkey, Jordan, Israel, and Lebanon will shoulder the burden of Hezbollah and the Syrian military as the conflict has spilled across, leaving thousands of refugees scrambling to safety. So I don't know where he's going with that, but Britain to step up aid to Lebanese army. This is what we covered a couple of days ago from July 6, preparing substantial new packages of military aid to the Lebanese army. So maybe it's just a containment strategy. UN calls on Hezbollah to withdraw from Syrian civil war. A 15-member UN council has called on militants affiliated with Lebanon's Hezbollah to cease their involvement in neighboring Syria's civil war. It was released on Wednesday, the statement was. So after objections were voiced by Russia. And why would that be? Well, let's get into it. Anti-Hezbollah group wants UN troops on Lebanon-Syria border. This is from June 18th. The Western-backed Lebanese group called for the deployment of the United Nations peacekeepers along the border with Syria as the spillover of violence draws Lebanon deeper into the war. From May 29th, U.S. calls on Hezbollah to pull fighters out of Syria. Hezbollah involvement signals extremely dangerous escalation, says the U.S. State Department. Then we have UN says Russia can't provide Golan peacekeepers. Again, this is June 7th, so all in the last month and a half. So, yeah, UN says Russia can't provide Golan peacekeepers because an agreement between Israel and Syria bars permanent members of the Security Council from the UN observer mission. Israel's military to station new unit along Syrian border. This is current from the 10th. The Israeli military is set to deploy a new regional unit along the Syrian border and occupy Golan Heights. So the Israeli regime has already increased its military activities recently in the occupied Syrian territory of Golan Heights, and so far this is reporting that this decision has been finalized by the Israeli Chief of Staff. So Egypt crisis sets off economic and humanitarian Gaza chain reaction. So this is, of course, to justify Israeli aggression, further clamp down on Gaza. It's like we said before, they thrive off Gaza and leaving these Palestinians alive to just torture them and make their lives miserable, right? Because they could just exterminate them if they wanted to, but they wouldn't benefit them. The result is further restriction on the movement of Gaza's fuel shortages, and unemployment. Israel deploys tanks along Syrian frontier, and Golan cites concerns of spillover fighting, so Reuters is reporting that Israel has deployed tanks along the ceasefire line in the Golan Heights, the first time they have done so in 40 years. For that justification to be true, the timing is odd, as while there are some fighting in Syrian Golan, it seems to have slowed down in the last several weeks, and no indication that the fighting is about to escalate there. So remember, we also covered this video. They titled it, I think, Al Qaeda, but Yarmouk Martyrs Brigade, main rebel faction in Golan, that I guess is fighting against the Syrian government. Basically put out a video where they were saying that they were never going to harm Israel. They were never, basically they're kind of an ally of them. Brotherhood militants move into Sinai to attack army. So scores of militants linked to Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood says here they're basically getting a confrontation with the Egyptian army over ousting Morsi. So they moved into the Sinai Peninsula to fight the military. They're expected to join forces of jihadist groups linked to Al Qaeda. So whenever you want to go, wherever you want regime change, wherever you want to create refugees, wherever you want to exploit resources, you send Al Qaeda. Good strategy. Gunmen attack military commander in Egypt's Sinai. The army says gunmen have opened fire on a car of a senior military commander in the Sinai Peninsula, followed by friends again, Saudi Arabia and UAE, the United Arab Emirates, jump in to aid Egypt. So usually it was Qatar, right? I titled my last set of videos is Qatar the big loser? Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait have pledged a total of $12 billion to Egypt. So yeah, Kuwait put in $4 billion. Taliban closes Qatar office to protest flag fracas. So it says here it hoisted the same flag flown during Taliban's 5-year rule of Afghanistan that ended with the 2001 American-led invasion. Egyptian army's firepower overwhelmingly U.S. supplied. So with this massive firepower at its command, the Egyptian security forces are armed with a wide range of mostly U.S. supplied weapons, ranging from fireplanes, helicopters, warships, missile, to riot-controlled equipment such as armored personnel carriers, of course tear gas, submachine guns, rubber bullets, and all the good stuff, right? So this has been the case ever since Egypt signed the U.S. brokered Camp David peace treaty with Israel back September of 1978. This is pretty much an American Zio-Anglo army, right? But it's funny how the Egyptian people, they keep getting these, quote, revolutions, and they think the army's on their side. The U.S. to send Egypt more of these F-16 fighter jets in the coming weeks. And talking about Egypt, Obama officials won't even mention the word coup, because either A, they were part of the coup, and or B, they don't want to have to do anything about it, so just sit back and let it play out. So the Syrian rebels say they don't expect the U.S. to deliver promised arms. They see a U.S. goal of keeping the war going. They doubt the arms will ever be delivered, and they're accusing Israel of being behind the delay, on the grounds that Israel is averse to the nation falling into the hands of al-Qaeda-linked militants. But they will sure use them as their proxy military mercenary force. Some think the purpose of this promise of arming them was to discourage the rebels from joining peace talks and trying to keep the rebels who have been losing territory from being overrun. Fast and Furious 2, U.S. arms showing up in hands of pro-Assad militias. U.S. and Western weapons have been reaching the Iranian-backed Shiite militia fighting to keep Assad's forces in power in Syria. Many of the U.S. weapons in the hands of the pro-Assad militias could have reached the black market after the major U.S. sales to Iraq in 2009. This is USA Today, so you can expect this loaded intro paragraph. But when they say Iranian-backed Shiite militias like to, drag Hezbollahs deep inside Syria, and you got Iranian Guard deep inside Syria, much of the fighting that's being done is by Free Syrian Army and Syrian militias. These are Syrians fighting for their territory to protect their leader that represents Syrian people. So when they put to Iranian-backed Shiite militias fighting to keep Assad's forces in power in Syria, his reign, his regime. It's a nice, cute little way to twist what's going on over there. Syrian government claims massive seizure of toxic chemicals controlled by anti-government forces. So they told the UN on Monday they have enough to destroy a city. Russia is saying that Syrian rebels used sarin gas in Aleppo attack. NATO's data says Syrian population behind Assad shows 70% of the population are supporting Assad and the government. Syrian rebels or militants opened fire at anti-siege protesters in Aleppo. Residents were protesting in Aleppo against the militants' measure preventing food, medicine, and oil from reaching civilians. And as Assad says the top priority for the Ba'ath Party is to enhance national unity, Iraqis mourn a fighter killed in Syria battle for what they consider a religious duty to protect Shiite shrine. 13th century mosque among victims of Homs shelling. Thank you.